think in the past I did a lot of. You're hearing me well, right? The volume I think is good. Great. The past I did some meditations that were very kind of directed, very specific. They're all always quite improvised, but I remember there were a few that were a little more technical and more specific around, let's say, self-inquiry. And I might do something like that today. I'm feeling I'm feeling that. Hello.
Hello. Hi. What was that? I didn't hear.
I was talking about in the past I used to do.
Oh, I heard that.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. Because there's different ways to meditate, and it's been coming up in questions in the group. And there's so many things that can be called meditation. And some of it is more towards what I would call growing up, and some is more towards what I would call waking up. And you really can't wake up without growing up, and you can't grow up without waking up. It kind of goes together. But you could have a bit more than the other, and then you do a bit of a back and forth. What often happens, and I talk about this way because what often happens is people get stuck. We get stuck. And it's unclear how we're stuck. And it's often because of this. It's often we are focusing on something which isn't what we're kind of hitting the ceiling in. So we could be focusing on something that I would call more of the growing up, expecting waking up, or we're trying to wake up and what we need to do is grow up. So the things we're hitting are more of the growing up. And it often happens, this is more startling, people who have, and this happened to me, people who have woken up to some degree don't realize it because there's so much work needed on the growing up aspect. And so you could still feel quite horrible, but there's quite a lot of waking up that happened. And so you tend to keep focusing on waking up, where what's happening is calling for the growing up work. And so I'm going to do a meditation today more around the waking up. But I wanted to talk about, all of this is just happening now. I'm not, but I think it's good to clarify what I mean a bit more around waking up and growing up. The quickest way to distinguish is growing up takes time. So it's what involves the body-mind, and it happens over time. It just cannot happen instantly. What happens instantly, if something happens instantly, it's waking up. And so anything that, in a sense, is stepping out of time, and you don't need to understand what that means or recognize it. Often it happens without us recognizing it. It's the waking up. And the waking up has different degrees. It can be partial or total. And we can have a lot of partial kind of steps of waking up. So there are glimpses, there are partial glimpses, and then there's total glimpses, and we can have them more than once. And often what happens is then we need to do the growing up work, which has to do with what has been seen in a glimpse, what has been seen in the waking up, needs to, in a sense, be applied and integrated. And there's a lot of growing up that isn't exactly related to waking up or the process of spirituality. It depends on how you define it, but there's how we get better at everything, how we could get better at work and relationships and all of that. And you could say the spiritual work is everything, but often it's good to just focus it on the mental emotional realm, like what's happening at the level of our emotions and at the level of our thinking. And so, for example, we could have had an experience of pretty clearly seeing true nature, but then living as if we hadn't. And so in that aspect, it's more important to trust what we've seen and really bring it into how we live. And that's what I would call growing up. And that would involve something that will bring us into relationship with more fear and more pain. But it'll be applied in a sense. It'll be what's happening in a relationship, what's happening with our relationship with the world, our relationship with ourselves, with our emotions, with kind of our past, our this could be described as shadow work, sometimes even doing therapy, often doing therapy, especially if one hasn't done therapy, then it's more likely that's what's needed. Sometimes if we've done a lot of therapy, that might not be the most important thing. But this is the kind of thing that is important to understand. There's these two kinds of aspects, and I've spoken about it in the past. Some other teachers talk about it somewhat in this way, some less. But I've seen a lot of this confusion where there's a lot of the focus on the waking up, and what's needed is the growing up. That's often the case in groups where there's a teacher who has awakened. That's often what happens. But then you could go to groups where there isn't a teacher who has awakened, and what's needed is the waking up. So they're very involved in like the growing up. They're kind of lost in a process of growth. And so, for example, I've gone to, and I'm going to stop talking very shortly and do the meditation. But for example, I went to India to Osho's ashram, and Osho is no longer there, obviously. And my sense is people there are completely lost in this kind of perpetual process of growth. They're not maybe speaking about it in that way. The language is very much around waking up, but it's this kind of process. And process by definition requires time. And so hopefully this isn't too clear. Hopefully it's a little confusing, because it should be.
Can I just ask something quickly?
Yes, of course.
What if that's the case, you need to grow up to wake up and wake up to grow up. Then how do you explain these spiritual teachers that do terrible things and are like clumsy and they're
Because that's where you well, obviously, if let's assume those teachers have had some level of awakening, because there's some who haven't, and then
yeah,
that's the reason.
some for sure have.
For those who have had some level of awakening, the explanation is very clearly either the awakening was partial, and so that's where they're at. And they're assuming, often the problem is assuming that it's total when it's partial. And then there's a lack of the growing up work.
But you said that they have to grow up to wake up.
Yeah, and that's why it's about terminology. So what I would say is you need to have both in order to what I call like more full awakening.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And then otherwise it's always this partial. You're even if you've had a total glimpse, until there is a lot of work on the growing up, then I would still say the work isn't done, and the work is never fully done. That's why it's gonna get a little messy talking about this, because it's trying to draw a map. Do you have a question, Nancy?
No.
Okay.
I'm just sorry, I forgot that I'm not on mute.
Oh, no worries.
It makes some sense, that's all. What you said.
Yes.
Land.
Yeah, so there's also the other side of what you're describing is when somebody says they're in a process of kind of infinitely integrating. Okay, now it's just a process of integrating. That is a trap. It is a trap of the kind of attachment to the progressive growing up. It's the attachment to time, because there is something that happens when both of those come together that is kind of final and complete, which doesn't mean you don't keep growing up. Growing up is infinite, it never ends, but there's something that gets completed in a sense, and there's always potential for more, but I'm saying there's something that happens after total waking up and a very specific amount of growing up, where what is seen is this kind of is that integration is kind of done to a degree that you could say is complete. And in Hinduism, or in Advaita, more like technical Advaita, you won't hear in like non-duality Western circles, it's called Sahaja Samadhi. And it's in Buddhism, it's basically when you see that nirvana and samsara are the same thing. So just kind of putting it out there as it's kind of a stage. And what happens is that the growing up now becomes kind of the fun and the play, and there isn't anything to get or anywhere to go. There's no longer something that's missing. And so that doesn't happen with waking up. It's required. You need to wake up for that to happen, but it's not sufficient. Okay, so that's my intro. I'm going to say one more thing, because I've been closer to Francis Lucille in the last few years. I know his language, and for those of you who might know his language or hear him, he um, he describes the total waking up as a liberating glimpse. That's how he calls it. Sometimes he's more technical, and he will say what he refers to as nirvikalpa samadhi. And then the growing, the part that I'm describing as the integration when it's completed at that level, he will describe it as sahaja samadhi, or that's the technical description. And otherwise, he would call it the establishment of peace.
So what was the Sanskrit term?
It's sahaja samadhi, which is different to nirvikalpa samadhi. So there are different kind of stages. Okay, so all of that, I'm going to do a meditation. I know 20 minutes went by, so I'm going to keep it a little bit short, but it'll be focused on often what is kind of blockers to waking up and what's not around growing up, because often in meditations I am pointing to the growing up aspects. So I'll try to focus it on just perception, sensation, and identity. So where is I? So this could be the question. And let's start the meditation. Let's just sit comfortably. You could keep your eyes open or closed. And what matters here is that which is the experience of I. And you can call this an inquiry. An inquiry is a curiosity, a childlike wonder. What is the nature of this? From there comes the question, who am I? The question isn't what matters. What matters is this childlike curiosity, wanting to know the nature of this, and specifically this which we know as I, subject, the experience of subject. So we begin with the assumption or clarification that we don't know the true nature of this. So there's more to be known, more to be seen. It seems that it is known is a misunderstanding. Something appears to be I which is not. And some questions that could be helpful in directing the curiosity is, who am I? Where am I? What am I? When am I? And so we can play with these and start with, where am I? And so the I, misunderstanding, comes from naming, calling, appropriating. Part of our experience we call I, and the rest we call not I. We call other. And so sensation we call I. Sounds we call other, unless it's our voice. So if we focus on sensation, we can bring our attention to our feet. And recognize there is a sense of that as I, me, mine. And the feet are on the floor. And so we're also sensing that which could be labeled floor, could be known as not I. So a sensation of the foot on the floor or our back or our bum on the chair or couch. Look for that boundary. There's a sensation, and part of it is called me, mine, and the rest is floor or couch, chair. It's going to be very simple, very immediate. Automatic. Notice, if you really look at that sensation, the sensation is one sensation. It's one, probably fuzzy, blurry, undefined. And one in the sense that there isn't sensation, foot that is mine and floor that is not. It is just sensation. We don't really feel the floor or the couch. We just feel sensation. Skin, flesh. And now simply recognize the question, where am I? And contemplate the knowing of that sensation. Am I the sensation or the knowing? This way you can scan all of your experience of body. Just move around everything you know as body. Arms, legs, face, neck, head. All known through sensation. Where am I? What am I? Am I in the sensation? In the foot? Am I the body? Or am I more the knowing of sensation? The knowing of body? Keep turning that curiosity inwards. When I say inwards, what does that elicit? Is there a direction? What is outwards? Is outwards towards sounds and sight? is inwards towards the body, the chest, the head. Why is that? Why is sensation of feet closer mine and sounds not me? Where is that line where part of experience is I and part is not? And as you ask, as you open curiosity, don't look for answers in thought. Wait for a knowing. A simple knowing of what is true and real. Trust what is true and real to you. Trust that this exploration, this curiosity, has value. It's not mere philosophy. It's not pointless. And trust that the knowing can come before you recognize it. A fleeting intuition, a sense of true or real, loving or peaceful. A brief rush of excitement or subtle fear. All of these are signs of getting close. Something relaxing. And keep this curiosity alive during your days. Playfully. Let the curiosity be genuine, innocent, childlike. Keep it alive. Who am I? Where am I? What am I? When am I? Come up with your own questions. Then you answer that. You can name is not it. That is a thought. It's what knows thoughts, what knows sounds, sensation, perception. Is nowhere and everywhere. Nothing and everything. It's not the body. It's not in the body. It's not the mind. And in your time, slowly come back to the group.